Pat. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for coming. I'm joined this morning, or this afternoon rather, by some of our state's most dedicated law enforcement leaders, including the Superintendent of the New Jersey State Police, Colonel Pat Callahan, to my left, other leaders from the New Jersey State Police, a number of our county prosecutors, including our county prosecutors from Essex, Hudson, Middlesex, Morris, Passaic, Sussex, and Union counties. We're also joined by police chiefs from across our state, the leaders of our Division of Criminal Justice, the Director Veronica Allende to my right, and Chief of Detectives Weldon Powell, as well as Tom Eicher, the Director of our Office of Public Integrity or Accountability, or OPIA for short. We're here this afternoon to announce a comprehensive set of policies that are designed to strengthen law enforcement in New Jersey. As I've said many times before, the Garden State is home to some of the finest law enforcement officers in the United States. And today's announcement helps us ensure that we maintain our status as a national leader in policing practices, that we work together to remain a national model in establishing and strengthening trust between police officers and the communities they serve. We call today's initiative, or today's announcement, the Excellence in Policing Initiative. And it's built around three key principles: professionalism, accountability, and transparency. Our goals are simple. We want to provide additional support for the 99% of police officers who do their jobs day in and day out with integrity and with distinction. At the same time, we want to root out those small number of cops who engage in misconduct, who dishonor their colleagues, and who diminish the great work that the men and women behind me and across our state do on a daily basis. At the same time, this initiative also answers calls from law enforcement leaders across our state who've asked us over the last 23 months for clarity and for certainty on some of the most challenging issues in policing today, so they can focus on their core public safety responsibilities. And importantly, the initiative that we announced today is the result of a collaborative process with those leaders and other community stakeholders, all of whom have worked with us diligently in recent months to develop many of the policies that we announced this afternoon. To kickstart this initiative, I'm issuing 8 documents today, 5 law enforcement directives, and 3 additional letters to police leaders across New Jersey. These documents reflect the most significant restructuring of policing practices, certainly during my tenure as Attorney General and perhaps in the history of the Office of the Attorney General. And while they cover a range of important issues, they are at their core designed to promote public safety and build public trust, again, by advancing those principles of professionalism, of accountability, and transparency. All of the documents are now available on our website, but I want to give each of you a brief overview of what we're announcing today. First and foremost, we're promoting professionalism. We're doing this by strengthening law enforcement training, by reinvigorating the state's police training commission. The head of that commission, John Cunningham, also joins us this afternoon. We're promoting professionalism by also improving our ability to identify at-risk officers, and by incorporating our new officer resiliency program into all aspects of the policing profession. With these changes, we'll make sure that our law enforcement officers remain among the best trained in the country, and that they have all of the tools and all of the resources to do their jobs successfully. Second, we're promoting accountability within the profession. We're accomplishing this by ensuring the independent investigation of all serious force incidents, including all fatal and non-fatal officer-involved shootings. We're doing it by creating a more robust disciplinary process within police departments, by requiring our 21 county prosecutors to more closely monitor internal affairs units in their counties, by establishing minimum requirements for those municipalities that choose to employ civilian review boards, and by asking the PTC to assess the feasibility of a police licensing program in this state. With these policies today, we're assuring the public that law enforcement takes accountability seriously and that we are committed to identifying all those who may dishonor their badges. And finally, we're promoting transparency across the state. We're doing this by requiring that all 21 county prosecutors, for the first time, establish comprehensive policies to ensure the timely disclosure of exculpatory evidence. We're doing it by permitting the release of video footage after use of force incidents, not just for fatal police shootings, but for any incident involving death in custody or a serious use of force by a law enforcement officer. And less than a year after we first announced it, we're creating new systems for collecting, analyzing, and publishing use of force data. And we're gearing up for the launch of a new statewide use of force portal. I'm honored that we're joined by the police chiefs from the 6 municipalities that will be beta testing this portal: Bridgeton, Linden, Millville, Patterson, and South Brunswick. I want to thank the chiefs in advance for their help in this critically important initiative. By creating this new system, we're also delivering on a promise that I made alongside the heads of all of our state police unions, that we would build such a system of our own and use it to ensure accountability, to ensure transparency, and to promote professionalism. But that's not all. It doesn't end with those directives or those initiatives. We're also working today to improve the quality of justice in New Jersey's municipal courts by enhancing oversight of our municipal prosecutors. And we're taking steps to formally establish the Office of Public Integrity and Accountability, an office that we announced last fall that was designed to strengthen public trust. It'll now be a permanent part of the Attorney General's office. And as part of that process, we're creating a new unit within our Office of Public Integrity and Accountability. It's called the Office of Policing Policy. This unit will be responsible for continuing the work of today's announcement, the Excellence in Policing Initiative, and for maintaining New Jersey's status as a national leader in this area. I'm also pleased to announce that I've appointed Assistant Attorney General Joe Walsh to serve as the first director of this new unit. Joe currently serves as counsel to me in my office, and he recently returned to our office after a 6-month tour overseeing the internal affairs functions of the Elizabeth Police Department. Joe has the rare distinction in this state of having served both as a prosecutor at a county level, at the Attorney General's office, as well as a police officer, having spent nearly 2 decades as an officer in Burlington County. I'm delighted he's agreed, I think, to take on this new role, and I want to thank him and wish him luck on this new endeavor. As you all can see, these are major changes, and it will take some time to fully implement them. But I promise to take the same approach when implementing these policies that we took when developing them. That's by working collaboratively with all of our law enforcement and community stakeholders. Whether it's on bail reform, criminal justice reform, sentencing reform, or juvenile justice reform, we work best when we work together. That, more than anything else, is what makes New Jersey so special. And that's what makes the Garden State a national leader on so many topics. Our state faces a number of challenges, but I'm confident that we could overcome them together, united in the goal of promoting public safety and public trust. I now want to turn it over to the Colonel of the New Jersey State Police, who along with our other speakers will provide some additional details about today's announcements, and after that we'll turn to your questions. Colonel?
Thank you, General. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll just echo a few of the General's remarks. I have the privilege and the honor of every now and again going on national conferences, even as recently as in October at the International Association Chiefs of Police, which has all the major city chiefs from across the entire country, including the other 49 colonels. And I'm humbled and honored by the fact that conference after conference, those executives in law enforcement look to New Jersey, to our chiefs, and to the state police as to how we're addressing challenges, whether that's the opiate epidemic, whether that's crime gun intelligence, whether that's information sharing, whether that's how do we engage with our diverse communities throughout our state. We didn't get there by accident. That's because of the 36,000 law enforcement officers, the men and women who get up every day and suit up and go out there to engage with the public and to protect the public. And it's a special place to be. I think that this excellence in policing initiative, the various facets of it, are just going to keep New Jersey and all of our law enforcement agencies as premier law enforcement agencies. So a year from now, when we're at these conferences, they'll be saying, what are you doing about internal affairs processes? How are you collecting and analyzing use of force data? What are you doing with regard to Giglio issues? And that's a testament to this Attorney General and all of those standing shoulder to shoulder here today, and all of those in this state that, as I said, took the oath to go out there and do the job with compassion according to the Constitution. So I'm honored to be included in this collaboration, and I look forward to remaining the state that all of those in the United States look to as the premier law enforcement agencies. Thanks, General.
Thanks, Colonel. Now it's my honor to ask Veronica Ande, the Director of our Division of Criminal Justice, to share some more details about several of these programs. Veronica?
Thank you, Attorney General Grewal. I am so glad to be here today and deeply proud to stand beside our top law enforcement officers and county prosecutors as we work to continue to promote professionalism, accountability, and transparency with our Excellence in Policing initiative that is announced here today. As a leader of the Division of Criminal Justice, I oversee over 100 law enforcement officers and over 100 prosecutors in the state. We take seriously our obligations to uphold trust, the trust that the community has placed in us. I am confident that the policies we announce today will improve our ability to protect public safety and to continue to promote that public trust. I'd like to now provide a few more details about two parts of our initiative, the Brady and Giglio Directive and the enhancements to the Police Training Commission called for by the Attorney General. First, the Supreme Court requires the disclosure of exculpatory and impeachment evidence. Defendants have the right to know whether the state is holding on to information bearing on their guilt or innocence. Also, information that could be used to impeach a state's witness. The Attorney General's directive requires each county prosecutor's office to adopt a Brady-Giglio policy consistent with the directive. Each policy must reinforce the legal responsibilities of prosecutors in this area. And each policy must establish clear procedures for gathering, reviewing, and disclosing Brady-Giglio material in a timely manner. The second topic I will address briefly is the Attorney General's plan to strengthen the Police Training Commission, or as we call it, the PTC. The PTC is housed in the Division of Criminal Justice and staffed by members of my division. But as an independent commission, its membership includes a cross-section of law enforcement interests in New Jersey. It is uniquely positioned to address issues of training and police qualifications. Attorney General Grewal is committed to reinvigorate the PTC so that it can better handle its growing list of critical responsibilities. The PTC will undertake two important projects. First, the Attorney General has asked the PTC to do a comprehensive assessment of our police training practices compared to best practices across the United States. The PTC will study topics such as how to combine experiential and classroom learning, as well as how to better ensure consistency among the many academies across our state. Second, the PTC will prepare a report on whether New Jersey should adopt a professional licensing system for New Jersey police officers. This is something that exists in a majority of states and reflects the professional nature of the work performed by law enforcement officers. Both reports are due by June 1st, 2020. The goal is to make New Jersey a national model for police training. For both of these projects, the PTC will solicit input from a variety of community stakeholders, including civil rights, social justice, and religious leaders. By ensuring the best training for our officers, we will lay a strong foundation for excellence in policing, a foundation on which we will build with the other major policy initiatives announced today. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Thank you, Director. And now it's my privilege to ask the Director of our Office of Public Integrity and Accountability, Tom Eicher, to share some remarks about today's announcements.
Thank you, Attorney General Grewal. I'm honored that you've decided to officially recognize the Office of Public Integrity and Accountability as a permanent part of the Attorney General's office, and that I've had the privilege to serve as its first director and will continue to do so. Excuse me. I'm also excited that Joe Walsh will be joining as part of OPIA and the Office of Policing Policy, and I have had a chance to work with Joe in many different capacities. The mission of OPIA is to pursue criminal charges against elected officials and government employees to hold them accountable and, when they intentionally violate their sworn duties or the rights of the people. That accountability also applies to the very small number of police officers who abuse their authority. The public should know that we will continue to bring criminal cases in those rare instances when a police officer illegally uses excessive force, as we did recently in the case of Joseph Dixon, who used force at a higher rate than any other officer in New Jersey over a 5-year period. But criminal cases affect only a very small fraction of our law enforcement officers, and this is how it should be, as the overwhelming majority of law enforcement officers strive every day to serve and protect the public. But because we have over 36,000 officers in this state, there are officers who will have problems that will need to be addressed. And to do that, we have updated the internal affairs process in a way that will have a long-term effect, I believe, on accountability of policing in this state. The internal affairs process now requires improved and standardized procedures for accepting civilian complaints. It encourages prompt resolution of all investigations of internal affairs complaints. It prohibits the outsourcing of internal affairs investigations. It requires greater oversight of internal affairs investigations by the county prosecutors. It clarifies and reemphasizes the importance of public reporting about the disposition of internal affairs matters, and it requires that civilian review boards, if they're enacted, meet certain requirements such as keep maintaining confidentiality of records. The Attorney General has directed the study by the PTC of a licensing program, but our reforms to the internal affairs guidelines already put in place measures to deal with certain issues. We have taken immediate steps to address problem officers who may try to move from one department to another to avoid meaningful discipline. The directive requires police departments to share internal affairs files for any officer who is applying for a law enforcement position at another agency in New Jersey. But our goal is not to catch the occasional bad apple in law enforcement, though we certainly will do that. Our goal is to make sure that officers have the oversight, training, and tools to correct improper conduct before it ripens into a full-blown problem. That is why the effort to move from an early warning gotcha system to an early intervention help you system is so vital. We will work with law enforcement leaders and academic institutions as well as our community partners around the country to make sure that we develop a national motto in that regard that incorporates resiliency into it. We know that officers can have 1,000 good interactions with the public and be undermined by a single video of a violent incident with the public. And that's why monitoring use of force and understanding use of force is so critical. Our effort to gather timely, accurate, and reliable data about the use of force is vital, and the pilot project we announced today with the 6 police departments on the use of force portal is an important step in that process. We've spent the last year working with law enforcement officers and academics to create a use of force data system that will be unique in the country. As you can see from the new use of force form, we are capturing much more information about the circumstances when force is used. That is critical not just to catch outlying officers, but to inform our training and our policy decisions. For example, research has shown that an officer who responds to a traumatic event is much more likely to use force in a later encounter on that same shift with the public. This type of information can affect a police department's protocols, such as not sending an officer out on a call in the same shift that they've encountered a traumatic event. As we update our use of force policy for the first time since 2000, we will use the data that we gather from this portal to inform that and to give officers clear guidance about how, when, and when force should be used to maintain safety and the public's confidence. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Before I turn it over to questions, clearly a number of announcements being issued today, a number of law enforcement directives, a number of letters as part of this initiative. It was a collaborative process with police chiefs, with stakeholders, to include community stakeholders, to include the police unions, who all contributed to the policies that we're announcing today. But it was an incredible team at the Attorney General's office that worked on this, so I want to thank those individuals in particular. Carolyn Murray, who's here, Dick Burke. I want to thank Joe Walsh, Tom Eicher, Matt Burns, Kristen Kruger, Keshav Podar, and the team at CJ, Sarah Quigley, and others who contributed to this as well. Again, a collective effort to move New Jersey forward and maintain its status as a national leader when it comes to policing practices. So with that, we'll open it up to your questions. Andrew.
I guess just first, I'd like to commend the incredible set of changes that you've got here today. I have a couple of questions related to issues that we've been reporting on in the last couple of years. So I guess the licensing thing is still being developed. But as you go forward with that, could an officer lose their license for less than criminal conduct?
So I think that's going to be wrapped up in what we asked the PTC to look at. We're announcing in the letter to the Police Training Commission to do a feasibility study and to see if this is something that New Jersey should implement, and if so, how it should be implemented and how it should work. And during that process, we intend to have a number of listening sessions and to give the PTC the resources that it needs to do this critical work. And so I'll defer to their findings, which we hope to have in the next 6 months.
As it relates to the Brady issues, the order would allow prosecutors to sort of develop their own standards for this, 21 different counties in the state. Why not like one consistent standard for the Brady issues?
So I disagree with the premise of the question. I think the guideline, the directive that we issued today sets the framework for what those policies should look like, and it brings uniformity to those policies. But at the same time, it recognizes that each of our counties has a different reality when it comes to their particular law enforcement agencies, their courts, the number of cases they handle. So a policy that or system that works in Warren is not necessarily going to work in Essex, given the volume of cases. So what we've done is put the parameters and the guidelines in place to ensure consistency, but we have to give our county prosecutors the discretion to come up within that broad framework the policies that work best for the realities in their counties, and that's what we've tried to do.
Is there like a minimum standard on what must be disclosed?
Yeah, if you look at the directive, and I think that's what we provide. We provide the framework of the types of materials that need to be disclosed, how disclosure should be made, but we give some independence to the counties as to how those materials are tracked and how that information is turned over. So, Michael?
A couple quick questions. One, how much of what you proposed today, the initiative, was informed by public input? And number two, in police licensing, what does that entail? If someone cannot be licensed as a police officer, you don't become a police officer in New Jersey?
So let me answer your second question first. We have a certification process that when someone completes an academy program, the PTC certifies them to become a law enforcement officer in this state. And so they do the certification piece. We're one of, I think, 6 states that does not have a licensing system, meaning that there's a way then to hold an officer accountable in case they violate standards or are terminated from a particular department, and to make sure that they can't escape that background issue by just going to a different department. The licenses help do that. We do that, as Tom mentioned, through our internal affairs guidelines by requiring hiring agencies to inquire and obtain the IA files from the previous employer. So this is another piece that could be used in that regard, but the feasibility of such a licensing system, the viability of it in New Jersey is something that we're going to ask the PTC to look at as part of its report. You asked about policies and the input of stakeholders. we have employed over the last 23 months since taking office a collaborative approach. And that collaborative approach reflects the input of law enforcement executives, of union executives, and the input of community stakeholders. So when we were coming up with our use of force portal and the policies that should inform what that should look like, we held a series of listening sessions across the state to include the north of the state, the center, and the southern part of the state, but also to include young people. We also went to high schools, and we talked to justice-involved youth. And so we brought in faith leaders as well and other stakeholders. So that's an approach we've employed anytime we've issued a directive, because I think we get it right when we get as much input from different stakeholders in formulating these policies. And that certainly was the case in everything that we're announcing today as well. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, hi. You have said, you have given directives already when it comes to how law enforcement can detain undocumented immigrants and not to collaborate with ICE unless they're criminals and there's criminal activity. My question would be, of these new policies, has anything changed? And also, what if certain municipalities still want to work with ICE? How would you handle that with prosecutors?
Sure. So we obviously issued last November the Immigrant Trust Directive, which placed the guidelines on when we could cooperate with ICE's civil immigration side. Again, like you've identified, we don't place any limitations on our partnership on criminal investigations. We partner each and every day with our federal law enforcement partners on criminal cases, but that directive draws that bright, clear line between our state's criminal law enforcement officers and what ICE does on the civil immigration side. We updated that directive recently to talk about 287G agreements on how we felt that they help blur that line. They don't improve public safety, but just make it more difficult for someone to understand the difference between a state law enforcement officer and a federal civil immigration officer when you have these agreements that allow you to deputize someone as a civil immigration officer. And so we told the two municipalities out of the 500 plus, or the two law enforcement agencies rather, out of 500, less than 1% of 1/2 infinitesimal number, that they couldn't have those. And so we think that's good for public safety. What we've announced today doesn't affect any of that. It's separate and apart. It's other directives touching on other law enforcement issues. And so, again, two separate issues, but we made that clarification last month rather.
What is the basis for the selection of the 6 departments that are part of the use of force pilot program? And did the FBI case involving the Patterson Police Department play any role in Patterson's selection for being part of that?
No, I think we tried to get a broad cross-section of municipalities from across the state. Chief Oswald is here and has been very proactive in Patterson about trying to improve professionalism in that department, about improving training, about partnering with us on law enforcement initiatives to work with our state police. So it was a natural partner who we've done a lot of law enforcement work with over the last number of months, as well as the other departments who have all had interactions with Tom. Our Office of Public Integrity and Accountability, we worked with them together, and we felt that this was a good, broad cross-section of municipalities to beta test this portal with. Anything else? Yes, Sandra.
I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about the making public these videos involving deaths. Can you talk a little bit more about which videos are public, and is that retroactive?
Sure, yeah. I mean, listen, the spirit of the initial directive, the body cam directive that we issued in February or March of 2018 was to promote transparency because we felt that the longer that these tapes were not disclosed, that created mistrust between law enforcement and community. So we set forward a policy that said after the initial interviews in a use of force, in that case fatal use of force situation, are completed, we will turn over the videos upon request, and that's presumptively after 20 days to give us time to do those initial interviews because we want to get the recollection of witnesses from what they know, not what they saw in a news channel or on a website. Today, we expand that to include all footage, not just body cam footage, to include dash cam footage, other surveillance footage, other types of footage that we might have received from witnesses that are in the investigative file. Again, presumptively after 20 days. To promote transparency and to promote trust between law enforcement and community, because that's the spirit of what the 2018 directive was. Today we further clarify and expand it. All use of force incidents, yeah. Previously in 2018 it was use of force incidents that resulted in a fatality. Today it's a broader range of videos covering all serious use of force incidents. So again, we want to be able to run out our investigations without people's memories or recollection of events being influenced by what they've seen on TV. And so we need a period of time to do that. And after that, upon request, we'll release the videos.
Serious use of force being anything from what, like not compliance hold, but anything above?
Yes. So it's above that. So, fatal officer-involved shooting investigations, non-fatal, other serious use of force incidents. The spirit is towards disclosure, so that's where we will err on the side of.
Looking through these changes that you're implementing now, have you been alarmed at how many incidents or people that have been needing to be addressed, or have you done any of that already?
No, I think the director spoke to this. 99.9% of our law enforcement officers, about the 36,000 cops in this state, do their jobs with distinction, do their jobs with integrity, and with the utmost of professionalism. And the colonel spoke about this as well. It is that rare officer that uses force illegally or transgresses or violates policies. And that one instance drags down an entire profession. And so we are devoting all these resources today and all these guidelines to find that one bad apple. And also, importantly, to prevent someone from becoming that next bad apple by investing in training on the front end. Instead of paying on the back end, we want to invest in training at the PTC. We also want to invest in early intervention systems so we could actually help folks before they might violate a policy or do something untoward with the civilians. So it is for that rare officer, and it really truly is a rarity in this state, but one is too many. And so we're doing everything possible because, again, this is for professionalism, for transparency, and for accountability. Michael?
In terms of police training, what do you envision in terms of changes improving police training? Because one of the things I hear from the public, like there was in Newark, a community meeting with Peter Harvey, looking over Newark's reforms there. And one of the people in the audience said, you know what, some of these officers out on the street, just one conversation with them, one word to them, and it's like lighting a firecracker or something. And insisted on police officers being psychologically trained and psychologically tested in an academy or some kind of situation before they're out on the street, before something turns out.
Yeah, I mean, what that curriculum should look like is something that we're going to ask the PTC to include in this study. I think the issue here is that we have a set of training that we require pre-service, and it's something that has been built on over the years to include some of the issues you talked about, to include crisis intervention training, to include issues relating to demeanor. But what we've done is we've always taken that manual or book of training and just added one more training to it, and just added another training to it, and just added another one. So what we're trying to do here is to just say, what if we had a blank slate, an open, blank canvas? What does the ideal, best practice, best training model look like? How can we do it the best if we started from scratch? And I think that's our goal here, to come up with the best training to identify and correct some of the issues that you talked about pre-service, before folks get on the street, and to see how we can do it better, because I know we can. And I know the PTC knows that they can do it better. And so it's incumbent on me, it's incumbent on the other leadership here to make sure they have the tools, the resources to do their jobs and to come up with that recommendation to us so we can move forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sharon. Thank you for coming. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Chief.
Good seeing you.
All right, we'll see you tomorrow.
Sorry, Mom.
General, it's good to see you. You're hiding.
Good job. Good job.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. See you later, sir.